Which players are set to boom in Week 14 and help you take home another victory in fantasy football? We're about to tell you. Welcome back to the Fantasy Endgame. I'm Pierre, he's Chris, and we're here to do as we do each week and give you our boom picks. These are the guys that we really like based on matchup, how they perform lately. We think are going to be locks for most of you because of their high upside this week. Let's get it going, Chris. Who do you like first?
Well, I really like Christian Kirk this week, and he's been the kind of the epitome of the boom bust guy. But when he booms, he really booms, and his busts haven't been too bad. But this looks like a spot where he should absolutely boom. Going against Tennessee, probably the biggest pass funnel defense in the entire league. And if you don't know what that is, that's a defense who's very strong against the run and very weak against the pass. They're currently ranked top 3 against the run and dead last against the pass. This is a defense you cannot run the ball on. You have to throw the ball on. And look, I was really high on Trevor Lawrence and the whole Jags passing attack last week against Detroit. They really let down. It didn't happen. But Christian Kirk had a nice game in that game. And I think he follows that up with an even better game this week. I think the Jaguars bounce back. This shouldn't be a game, where they're getting blown out. They're not really going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they'd like to. They're going to have to beat this team through the air. That is how you beat this team. That is how you beat this defense. And, we've been picking on this defense a lot this season with our booms or with our start sits. And I don't think they've really let us down. Every time we've picked wide receivers to boom against them or play well against them, they pretty much have. So no reason to be worried about Christian Kirk this week at all. All signs trending up for Christian Kirk. I think he has a big game this week. If you got him, you need to win this week, or you just want to stomp on your opponents and show how your dominance and how great your team is. Start Christian Kirk this week. He's going to go off.
I mean, definitely one of those guys you don't really know what to expect in any given week, but you hate to keep that upside on the bench, and I think this week you can't keep him benched. So a similar type of player is Deebo Samuel. I mean, been up and down. Obviously not the guy he was last year when you drafted him in round 4 or 5, if you were lucky enough to draft him, and basically helped you to win your league because he was one of the top players in all of fantasy. This year, a couple of big games, but a lot of times he's been more disappointing than anything. And now with starting quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo out for the season, some people are worrying, what's going to happen to the offense? What's going to happen with guys like Deebo who haven't been great as is? I actually think he gets better, and let me tell you why. First of all, if you noticed last week, and I'll admit was a little skeptical of even playing him last week, he had been limited in practice lately, wasn't even a sure thing, but he was a full go, but also he happened to tie his season high in targets with 10. I don't think it's a coincidence that when Brock Purdy came in the game and they need to figure out how to get this offense moving with a backup or rookie, no less, quarterback, they went a lot to Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. The guys who benefited are those who are getting the ball either behind, at, or close to the line of scrimmage. The guys who suffered a little bit, and I think will going forward, is Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. So right now, Deebo, I think, is going to start going up in value. He's probably going to see more touches than before, and you know what he can do with the ball in his hands. So right now, it's really not so much about the matchup. I mean, Deebo is pretty much matchup proof, is he not? Get the ball in his hands and watch him go. Tampa Bay, yes, they won, but they're coming off that short week now. And look, their defense, just like their offense was terrible until the very end, but their defense really didn't look that great even against New Orleans. I'm pretty sure Brock Purdy can do some things by just giving the ball to Deebo, and I really feel like Deebo is back to being a must start. All right, so let's go to the next boom pick. Who you got?
Well, if you need tight end help this week, and a lot of us do, I'm going to suggest you go out and get Hunter Henry because he gets the Cardinals. And this is like, the Cardinals are like that defense that you just want to stream tight ends against. They allow the most receptions, yards, and touchdowns to tight ends. And if you have been watching us all season, remember a couple of weeks ago, people were a little nervous about George Kittle. And I said, he's going to boom this week. He's got the Cardinals. And what did he do? He went out there and boomed. And what is Hunter Henry's kind of MO? It's either boom or completely bust, right? He either catches a touchdown or two or he does absolutely nothing. Well, this definitely looks like a week where he could boom because, again, it's the Cardinals. they cannot stop tight ends for whatever reason. And we know Hunter Henry will be involved. He's actually gotten 5 targets in each of the last 2 games. And we saw it a couple weeks ago on Thanksgiving. He should have had a 2-touchdown game. He got robbed of that 1 touchdown that was overturned by the officials. I think this could be another game where he has a 2-touchdown game, because when they get near the red zone, it's either Ramondre Stevenson or Mac Jones looking for Hunter Henry. So in this matchup against the defense that you just begs you to stream tight ends against, if you're desperate out there, if you're looking at guys like, I don't know, Greg Dulcich, Evan Engram, guys like that, or Hunter Henry, I'm going Hunter Henry over all those type of guys. I think he just has way more upside than them in this matchup. I think he's going to have one of those vintage, I call it vintage, but 2-catch, 2-touchdown games and help people win their weeks. So if you need a tight end, go get Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough out there for tight ends as it is. You need that upside, the guy who could find the end zone. Hunter Henry probably has the best chance out of all those streaming options. So let's go to Miles Sanders, a guy that, most weeks you're going to start him, but some weeks you're left disappointed. And last week was one of them. Look, I know he found the end zone, but that was just kind of how it happened because they were so close. They gave it to him. Yardage-wise, not much. He's not a guy who really usually provides a big buffer in terms of a floor as a pass catcher. Sometimes he gets vultured at the goal line by Jalen Hurts or Kenneth Gainwell or someone else. Well, this week, I think is going to be a boom week for him, obviously, because he gets the Giants, and you may not realize, as good as the Giants have played for most of the season, their run defense is still not good. I know I mentioned this before. They are bottom 5 in terms of total rushing yards allowed to running backs and yards per carry. And that's what you want to hear for a guy like Miles Sanders, who maybe doesn't get as much volume as some of those other starting running backs, but he makes the most of it when he gets the opportunity. And this is a guy who at any given moment could have a big game. Didn't have it last week. I think he has it this week. Also, talk about game script. Well, I think this is going to be a battle that's a little bit closer because the Eagles necessarily not going to run all over the Giants. And I mean by that, not run over them with the passing game like they did against Tennessee, which you just mentioned. So I think we're going to see a lot of Miles Sanders. I think he's going to be effective, and I think you have to keep him in your lineup. This could be another week, just like when he had a couple weeks ago against Green Bay when he went off. It's kind of what I'm feeling this week. All right, let's do one more pick each. Start with you. Who's your final boom?
Well, I'm saying you've got to stream Hunter Henry. I'm also saying you got to stream Jared Goff if you need a quarterback this week. Look, if you lost Lamar Jackson and Jared Goff is on your waiver wire, I'm grabbing Jared Goff because, number one, they're at home. And Jared Goff and the entire Lions offense has been much better at home. In fact, Jared Goff has scored at least 16 fantasy points in all but one game at home. And he's gone over 20 fantasy points 4 times at home this year. All of his best games have been at home, and all of his worst games have been on the road. Second, it's Minnesota. They're not a very good defense, not a very good passing defense at all. And this, looks to be an absolute shootout because you got a Minnesota team, not a good defense, but does have a very good offense. And you have a Detroit team who also doesn't have a very good defense, but has a pretty good offense. And look, he's got everybody healthy right now. Swift is back. He looks great. He's playing great. Amon-Ra is healthy and great. DJ Chark is back and healthy. He's got weapons. He's got everything he needs at home. I think Jared Goff has another big week. He had a big week last week. I don't know if people noticed it because nobody really started Jared Goff, but he was also at home in that matchup. Now at home in another good matchup. I think he does it back-to-back games. Again, if you lost Lamar Jackson and Jared Goff is on your wire, he is one of my top streaming options this week. I think he booms again.
This should be a game that has plenty of fantasy points. And people might not even realize that Detroit is fighting for a playoff spot. They're actually somehow in the mix here because they've been winning lately. I think they're going to be motivated and firing on all cylinders against Minnesota. And so I'm going to go with a quarterback who I think has been more than a streamer. I think it's safe to say Geno Smith has been a guy you can kind of count on all year long. It's hard to believe the whole story that how this happened. Nobody thought of this coming. But look, Geno Smith has been a top 12 quarterback all year, and he's coming off arguably his best game of the season. Obviously, led a game-winning drive, both of those receivers had huge game, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and that was against a good, granted, maybe not as good as they used to be, but still a pretty solid Rams defense. Well, now they get to go back home and they get to face the Carolina Panthers, who, let's face it, are going to be a lot worse than the statistics tell you. Because you look at Carolina and you say, well, they haven't been one of the worst against quarterbacks. They haven't been, completely rolled over. I think the stats are lying in this case. Because you look at who they faced lately. Russell Wilson last week, before the bye. And then they faced Marcus Mariota twice before then. And they did have to face Joe Burrow, but if you remember, Joe Burrow didn't do much because he was busy handing the ball off to Joe Mixon, because that was the Mixon game where he scored 5 times. Didn't really need to throw the ball a whole lot. So Carolina isn't necessarily the type of defense that just, rolls out the red carpet for quarterbacks and receivers, but they're not a great defense. And Geno has been playing really well, and I think they keep it going. Seattle's a team that definitely wants to win an easy game for themselves because they're fighting for the playoffs as well. I think Geno keeps it going and has another good statistical game. He's one of my favorite guys who really shouldn't even be a streamer at this point, but I have him as a top 10 quarterback this week. All right, those are some of the players we are loving this week. Don't forget, we have you covered with start-sit advice at every position, so you know who we like, who we don't. Check out this Week 14 playlist right here for all the advice that you need.